Hey, what's up, guys? All right, for today, first of all, full disclosure about my situation. I have a 4-year-old who is sick upstairs. You can't see me because I'm screen grabbing, but I hope you heard the quotation marks in my voice there. Um, he was sick this weekend, and he popped a fever this morning, so obviously we're not sending him to school. But he's great, so that's good, obviously. But I say all that to say, as always, there's a distinct possibility um, we might hear or feel him in some kind of a way at some point in the video. I'm going to try to get through all of this as quickly as I can, as always, but that goes double for today because who knows? All right, to begin with, this video is going to be a little bit of a grab bag because it's one of those videos that marks kind of a conflux of two different streams of thought. And here's what I mean by that, because I know that didn't make a lot of sense. One, I want to talk to you about the revision. I know not all of you, because I just checked, have looked at the feedback yet for paper two. I feel like you should do that. I think it would be a good idea. Of course, I can't force anyone, but in the event that you'd like to revise, first of all, I want to remind everyone I straight up replace your grade if you do better on the second try. So it's a good idea to go for that. And also, I don't ding you for not doing better. So um, there's no risk involved. I just, if I were in your position, I would certainly take a shot, but that's me. Anyway, we're going to talk about revision first, and then we're going to talk about your third papers, as we're sort of gearing up to try to get those going. To begin with, though, just so I don't miss any business stuff, I have the syllabus open here. Um, of course, I release our videos a day early just to give you guys as much time as possible, but we're looking at Tuesday. We're going to kind of do all this in one way, shape, or form. But I want to remind you, for Tuesday, your paper proposals are due. Now, if you happen to watch this video um, today as I post it, or just in a reasonable amount of time, I do think what we talk about toward the end will help you maybe think a little bit more about those proposals. So you may want to view that first, and also just so we're all on the same page, for next time, for Thursday, you have your first two bib entries due, and to remind everyone about that, you have the prompt on Courseden with a step-by-step breakdown of what needs to be in each one of those entries. And also at the end of the video, I'm going to talk a bit more about research and just sort of what that needs to look like. Okay, so first, let's go to the revision. I will post this as a document, as I always do, to Courseden. I'm not in love with leaving it single spaced, but I wanted to get it all on one screen for you. So if you don't want to open the document, you can just listen to me talk at you and read it here. Also, though, I actually want to highlight something for you. So, as always, preamble. This is paper two. This is a classmate's draft. It's anonymous, of course, so only that person knows we're looking at their stuff, and I'm sure they're on pins and needles at the moment. Apologies for that. Um, they did okay. They did okay on the paper, and a lot of you did. First of all, so that's good to me. That shows progress. Okay, um, but as always, there's some things we can improve. For one, you'll also notice, since this is single spaced, you can really sometimes feel how underdeveloped certain sections of the paper are when you single space it. Double space can hide some of that, can kind of make you feel like maybe there's a little more to whatever you're saying than there is. And yeah, these look a little skimpy in places. Oh, thank you. So, where does that come from? Well, first of all, to be totally clear on what we're looking at, this is the student's introduction right here. This is their first body paragraph. If you would, if you have not already, go ahead and pause the video. We're going to talk about the intro first. Go ahead and read that. I'll give you a second to pause. All right, as always, just kind of hoping that happened. So what are we looking at? Well, we're sorry, God, we're critiquing the John Oliver video. Um, and the first thing I want to point out, they have all the parts, right? They give us The intro to the text, it's rather brief, which is good. We want that to be brief, right? We have a roadmap, we have a thesis. The issues start with the roadmap and with the thesis. My real question is, what do they actually say? Like specifically? They don't, right? Here's what I mean by that. He manages to bring up positive and negative aspects, and I'm like, what aspects? Several different ways. What ways? There are certain things he said. What did he say? Uh, and it all of this carries over to our argument, our critique, which starts here. They were good points, but not everything was relevant. How? What? When? Why? Like any of those, right? Um, I'm risking beating a dead horse here, but I want to be as clear as I can be. We're super, super vague, and I'm not sure why. I know sometimes you guys will come out of high school, for instance, with this idea that like you don't want to give things away, or something like that. If any of you are entertaining those notions, please stop now. The better way to think of it is, because this is an introduction to your paper, it's an introduction to your argument. You don't want me to be surprised. This is not like a magic show, okay? Um, you want to start convincing me here. If I run into information, even if it's great, even if I think it's really valuable, that's even worse, because if I run into that halfway through your paper, my immediate thought is, why am I just now hearing about this, right? So you want that stuff in your introduction. Do you want all of it in your introduction? Obviously not. That's what your body paragraphs are for. But bear in mind, we call it a roadmap because it's meant to kind of walk us through, to the best of your ability, the sort of broad strokes of your argument. This is just too broad, basically. And of course, this bleeds into the thesis as well, which we've actually kind of started here. Um, the last sentence at the end, it seems like there are a few times in which you got carried away. Again, give us one of those times. Tell us one of the good points, maybe tell us one that was less relevant. What that's going to allow you to do is talk about why those things get described like that, according to you, right? That's the beginning of your argument. And that's going to allow you to time together in a much more developed thesis. Right now, as I said, we have all the parts to the introduction, which is good. You need those. But we're kind of basically missing an argument. We gesture to an argument. We just don't really have one yet because we're not nearly specific enough. So that's the introduction. All right. Same deal with the body paragraph. If you have not already, I'll go ahead and I'll give you a beat to pause here. Read that for me. I'll wait. All right. All right. I'm hoping you read it. Now, we kind of have all the parts here. And what do I mean by that? We sort of have a topic sentence, but not really. We absolutely have evidence, so that's good. And we have a bit of analysis. What am I talking about? First of all, let's start at the top. The first example he brings up is about Sarah Michelle Gellar. Already, I feel like we've taken a bit of a misstep. You almost never, I mean, sometimes you can do it for the sake of a transition, granted, but you almost never need to locate us in a text. If it's his first example, last example, any of that, unless it somehow factors into your argument, which it does occasionally, you don't need it. You don't need to do that. It's filler. And the reason I point that out is it's a big chunk of our sentence. That's kind of huge, right? Um, Now, combine that with the fact that all of this, and it's a sizable sentence, I'll grant you. What it technically ends right here. Holy cow, that's a sentence. Um, this is also our evidence. So what that means is we've kind of, sort of merged our shot at a topic sentence with our evidence. It leads to a monster sentence, and it also just kind of confuses the structure, if that makes sense. So what would be better to me, break it up. Like, give us the evidence in its own sentence. That's going to allow better context, first of all, because we don't really have a whole lot of context here for that quotation. And it's actually going to allow you a better topic sentence. For instance, they say it's a good first example when it comes to public shaming. That's a critique. Okay. But again, we have to be way more specific. What's good about it? there's a couple things you could talk about, and I don't know which one we're looking at here. Now, again, I like to point out to you guys when we draft, when we write, we usually don't know to begin with, and that could easily be the case here. I'm cool with that, but you got to start training yourselves to keep in mind that you're gonna make discoveries as you go, okay? And when you do that, at some point in your process, you got to go back to earlier parts of your paper and say, okay, where am I too general? Where do I need to maybe even change things wholesale? Sometimes you'll change your mind as you write. That happens. You got to look for this stuff, and this is a pretty big one here. What's good about it, right? Okay, so we're going to try to solve that on our own. Um, so that means we're looking at evidence now. So most obviously, that's our evidence. That quotation there, it's a little bit long. It's not too long. I'll say that. It's about as long as it can be though, for a paper of this size. He says, "Wait, what did Sarah Michelle Gellar do? I'm already so angry about it. Actually, don't tell me about it. I just realized I really don't care, or I don't really care." All right. So it's a little joke early in the video. What do we say about it? We have a bit of analysis here. Now I have some issues with that we're going to talk about, but we're just talking about structure right now. So there's some analysis, and then we kind of merge analysis with evidence here, if that makes sense. And then we kind of double down on our earlier analysis. So what are we really saying about it? The biggest issue here, and we've talked about this off and on, sort of in the process of paper 2, but I pulled this example to give you a really good example um, of how it can kind of totally sidetrack what you're trying to do. Basically, what we have here is they're not treating the text fairly in this case. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we've acknowledged that it's a joke, or at least I have. Do they do that in here? No, they don't. This is a joke, and they're not treating it as a joke. Do you see what I'm saying? Like they're taking what he says completely at face value when I would argue it's obviously a joke. Um, I mean, the way he like his tone, I guess, is what I'm pointing to. Um, but also, what's kind of going on here? Like, what actual point is he trying to make? His point is not, to be clear, that he wants you to think he cares about it. So we can't treat it like that. Like their whole issue, their whole critique, and they say it's a good first example, which is interesting because that's really not how the rest of the paragraph reads. Um, they're saying it's useless. It's not going to be informative. Lose interest. I mean, maybe, but our evidence doesn't speak to that. Our evidence speaks to this is a joke, and what's the point of that joke? The point of that joke is that he doesn't care what Sarah Michelle Gellar did, and according to his argument, he doesn't feel like you should either. So we got to take that on. Do we feel like we should care whatever Sarah Michelle Gellar did? Personally, no. Uh, I may have mentioned this already. I would frankly be very surprised if most of you even knew who that was. That was a celebrity from when I was a kid, on a vampire show. So like, it's just odd that the joke is basically we kind of live in a joke time where a celebrity of that kind of status makes the news for upsetting people on Twitter or something, right? He's pointing to the like insanity of the world we live in, that could be a news story. That's his point. That's his argument. Now, we can critique that. We can think about whether or not he's successful in making that argument. And some of what they've said could come into play here in a way. But what we can't do, if we're going to be fair to the text, is take a joke seriously at face value. We have to consider what his real point is, and it is not, I don't think, uh, wanting us to believe that this is informative, or what have you. This is not. We're not reading a textbook, right? We're not watching a documentary. It's a joke, so you got to treat it like that. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Again, as I said, this paper did okay. The one paragraph I pulled was really their one big misstep, and unfortunately, it was their very first body paragraph. But yeah, in general, like I said, just to reiterate real quick what they do well, they have all the parts. Some of you are still struggling with that, um, and that's kind of the first step you got to take for multiple reasons. But after that, it could still be better. We got to get much more specific. That's this student's big struggle. Is just being specific. We're way too quick with information. We're not nearly detailed enough. And then in the example that I pulled for the first body paragraph, we got to be fair to the text. We're not really being fair to it here with what it's attempting. All right. So as I said, I'm gonna post this to Courseden, and it will be there when you see the video. So anyway, moving on. Where are we? I want to talk about paper 3. So normally I anonymize. Is that right? Anonymize. Ooh, I didn't say it correctly. I anonymize information that we look at, but of course, we're looking at a discussion post, so it's not anonymous anyway. So if you happen to see your name here, hi guys, um, this is available to everyone. So I didn't jump through a bunch of hoops to like put this in a document and make it anonymous. That just felt silly to me because it could easily be found by anyone who wanted to find it. All right. So what we have, this is our latest discussion post. I gotta drink something real quick. Sorry about that. This is our latest discussion post, the pre-proposal, right? What do we have here? Vance has an interesting idea. He basically he sent me an email about this as well. Wants to talk about these two people, and given the brief description, they clearly disagree with each other, right? Politically, I suppose, but I imagine they disagree with each other in other ways as well. We have a response from David, and he makes actually some good points about sort of research ideas, things like this. You guys are talking to each other, which I appreciate. But the point I want to make is a couple things here. Number one, I as a teacher, okay, like just to be totally clear, I worry a little bit that we might have too many texts. Pardon the pun. We may have too many cooks in the kitchen, if you're familiar with that phrase, because the paper, if you have too much information to kind of chew on, it gets more difficult to make an argument, given the amount of time that we have in the paper. Okay, we only have so many pages. But also, sometimes it's worth taking a step back and saying to yourself, what is my text? Now, this can lead to confusion for some of you. So, to define what a text is, because you guys are most used to a written text, a text is anything you can study. Okay, it's anything you can analyze. In this case, I don't think our text is either one of these people. And I don't even think, I mean, it kind of is, I guess, in a way, but I'm not even sure our text is really the if you could call it a conversation. I don't know that these people ever actually speak to one another, but the conversation between these people, I don't think it's that either. Our text is the fact that people like this exist at all. What do I mean by that? What do both of these people do? They watch other people's videos and judge them. And by the description, again, I'm not familiar with either one of these folks. It sounds like they actually just make fun of other people. Now, you could argue, I suppose it's only on my mind because we were just talking about it. You could argue a show like John Oliver sort of does that too, but I would actually contend that's not all that he does. That's like maybe say 20% of what he does, right? So my point here is what's interesting, the most interesting aspect of the information we have in front of us. I think the text is this like crazy genre of YouTube video where basically people go on, in this case with a political perspective, and just bash other people, I suppose, that they disagree with. That is a very interesting, somewhat recent development that's worth study. Now, of course, this brings me to my next question, which is how the hell are we going to look into any of this? How are we going to research it, right? Well, I'm gonna walk you guys through. I did a little bit of this earlier just because I have to double check it before I try. But I tried what they gave us. All right. So obviously the first thing that comes up is videos because it's a YouTube personality. I assume because these are, and this is what's great about the world we live in. These are videos about the videos that are about other videos. So I assume this woman on the left is the quote unquote crazy vegan teacher. Um, this sniper wolf person is, I guess, sniping at them. So again, they're in the same genre. I don't know that this person on the right, because she's the one that comes up when you, no, that's fun. Um, I don't know any of these people's work, right? It's not for me, probably. Um, but yeah, it's this whole genre of making fun of folks for all kinds of reasons. Um, but down here, we actually have a little bit of research. Holy cow, she has a Wikipedia page. Look at that. She was born in 1964. That's her name. Sounds like Dutch or something, descent there. She's Canadian, animal rights activist. That almost goes without saying. She's my parents' age, though. That's wild. Uh, wow, that's strong. Um, Now what's interesting, so she's done some things apparently. What's interesting, um, is the sources, and the sources are going to be different, right, based upon whoever you're looking up. Uh, I'll open Wikipedia to show you something, but we're not gonna, just to be clear, we're not gonna use Wikipedia, but we're gonna use it to find other sources. Um, at first blush, I worry a little bit about plantbasednews.org, and vegannews.press. I worry about that as a reputable source, but we just looked up crazy vegan teacher. So I mean, yeah, they might they might have something to say, so in our cursory research we're doing right now, we might open those just to get a feel for what's going on, you know. Anyway, her Wikipedia page, sometimes she's controversial, yeah, apparently, according to these folks. This is a description of her. She's pretty popular apparently, so that's wild. All right, stuff about her personal life for some reason. All right, so I wanted to see, yeah, down here. These are all the sources. Now, what's wild about a place like Wikipedia or any encyclopedia, it's not a super long entry, right? Look at all these sources. Holy cow, right? And a lot of these sources, because whether you realize it or not, Wikipedia has some fairly high standards. A lot of these sources are more quote unquote reputable, right? The Daily Dot, for instance, is actually a pretty reputable source, and that seems. Look at this. Like, you can just tell from the top. Look, I'm not trying to call out vegan news, but like it looks like something you would make in high school. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't. It probably. Wow, I guess that's from her song. That's so she's got some views, you know. Um, but the Daily Dot is probably going to be a little more understated, I guess, when it comes to discussing the material, and probably just a little easier to read in my experience. So we would scroll through this, and look, I don't think it's probably super long. Yeah, that's it, right? But this is just a breakdown of something she did, I guess, with a song on TikTok that like really upset some people. Um, it doesn't say anything about the song, but I expect some of the lyrics are probably pretty rough, so maybe they don't want to quote it. Um, so already I'm probably going to replace vegan news with the Daily Dot if I'm interested in this teacher and whatever she did to get canceled, right? This seems like a pretty good place to start. Um, this is another description of it. And again, okay, I may not use either one of these sources, but it may just help me in my research, go looking for other sources. Yeah, and you understand at this point, right now, it kind of feels like we're eliminating this Butterfield guy simply because there's plenty to go on Diekmeyer, I think was her name. Um, so yeah, we could start here. We could just start talking about her song, whatever that was. That could be a thing to do. If we are more interested in the original text, because the text we're kind of changing to, morphing to as we research, is this is she's more like everybody else, like she's been canceled for something. That sounds pretty screwy if I'm being honest. Um, we could do that, or we could keep our original text. But I want to be clear again. Our original text is not these two people. Our original text is the fact that they exist at all. What and there's got to be a genre for this. What I wonder what it's called. You guys might know because you're into it and I'm not. But like I don't even know where to. Well, if I could type, that would help. Oh, we're just getting awful music videos now. Outstanding. Um, what has happened? All right, I'm using it as a guest, and Google is not being kind. Um, hmm. No, see the hard part is sometimes when you try to look at YouTube, you get a bunch of crappy YouTube. Um, anyway, I might do some outside research on that because there's got to be a term. We can't be the first people to have realized this is a genre, right? Um, I'll send you guys that in an email. But my point is, this could be a totally different text from how we're posing it, and that's okay. The whole point of the process we're undertaking is to figure out what it is we want to talk about. Sometimes that's offering several people and thinking about what they're about, and maybe they're your text. Other times it's what one of those people has done. In this case, um, this person did that apparently. And other times still, it's kind of a third option where just the fact that we have people like this at all, and I think it said the Diekmeyer person had 50 million views, I believe it was. Um, for what? For just kind of shitting on people, right? Like, isn't that just what it is? Um, what does any of that say about us as a people, a society, a culture? Not just that people like that exist, but that they exist because we want to watch it. Like something about us enjoys uh, watching people tear down other people. I mean, you expect most people who watch this person, and again, I'm not familiar with her work at all, so I don't. I mean, this is obviously how Vance describes her. Um, it seems somewhat accurate given what we've seen about her in a couple of those articles. Um, you expect most people who watch her stuff uh, identify with her politically or identify with her with the vegan thing, animal rights thing, you know. Okay. So are we are we talking about polarization? Perhaps that could be part of our conversation. Are we talking about um you'll hear this sometimes described as like a silo. I think they talked about it in The Social Dilemma, right? Where people only want to see things that they agree with. Um, could this be a kind of symptom of that phenomenon? What I mean is, if all you do, and again, pardon the pun, is ingest material like this, that a logical kind of offshoot of that is to see material like this, make fun of material that's outside your silo, right? Like we're entertained now by tearing down information we don't like. Um, any and all of that could be a start to a paper on this if that's our text. Step number one is deciding what our text is. So I don't think it's both of these people. I think that's going to be too complicated for the the length of paper that we're writing. Because you'd spend at least 2 pages talking about both these folks. That's too much. That's half your paper. Um, to me, you could. We didn't even look at the Butterfield guy. I mean, he may have things going on too. Um, but I would roll with one of these people, And then you have some decisions to make. You can just talk about the fact that she was canceled if you go with her. That seems rife, to say the very least. Um, or you could just talk about the fact that it's a thing at all. So to end this, I'll give you one more quick example, and I'm going to take a drink because I'm dying. I mentioned Kanye West, and I've had a couple people hit me up wanting to write about him. You guys always do. That's why I brought him up. It's totally fine. He um, is an interesting guy, you know. Um, what's most interesting to me is the ways you guys will write about him. So, again, his most recent, I suppose, controversy is basically being like a really upset ex-boyfriend, right? I mean, ex-husband, but same rules apply in this case. Um, and he just happens to have a huge platform because he's a celebrity, so everybody gets to hear about his crazy ex-boyfriend feelings, right? Um, well, what about that? So what I mean is, and again, this is how students tend to write about somebody like Kanye West anyway. On the surface, you're gonna think that you're just writing about how wild this guy is, how quote unquote crazy he is, right? A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people, especially these days, kind of feel like he's gone too far, um, and he should maybe be judged for that, and all these things. Again, you could start kind of trying to research into some of that. But to me, for a guy like that, the conversation at some point always comes back to, is he actually possibly emotionally distressed? Like, I said quote unquote crazy, but honestly, it seems like the dude might actually have some issues, you know? And I don't know that we ever actually talk about that. And again, what I would not want anyone to do is try to diagnose Kanye West or try to do anything even approaching that, right? What's interesting to me as a text, again, you got to always bear in mind, what does any of this say about us? So we start with the text, but that text is somehow a reflection of us, okay? In this case, it's the fact that I think I think you could very easily argue, whatever your opinions on Kanye West, we're all pretty entertained by his antics, right? Anyone who engages with that stuff is entertained by it. Well, what are you really being entertained by? Couldn't you easily argue that we're all just kind of really invested in a guy who's publicly struggling constantly? Like, isn't that kind of what's happening? Um, Now, again, I'm not saying the dude's without fault or anything like that. He's an adult, but I think it's important to kind of point to when we are, as a society, complicit. I think we are. So again, the question would be, well, what does it say about us that no one really is entertaining? Like, maybe this guy should get some help. Maybe as a society, we should give him less attention. Maybe that's what he actually needs. In any and all of that, none of that is ever part of the conversation, right? It's always, oh, can you believe what this crazy guy did most recently, right? Because again, it's gossip at that point. It's entertainment. It's a reality show that lives on Twitter. That says a whole lot about how we think about celebrity. It says a whole lot about how we think about people, especially when they are celebrities. I don't know that we think about them as people very much anymore after that point, right? That's where I would start if I was looking at a guy like that. So that's what I mean here. You want to start with your text, but then you want to actually work to identify what your text really is, how you're going to talk about it, and then finally, how that text, in some way, shape, or form, is a reflection of us as a people, a society, a culture. As a society, we made these people famous. We continue to make them famous. We continue to find them entertaining or interesting, or however it is we engage with them. And that's what it is I want you to do your best to make an argument about. So start there to the best of your ability. We have proposals due next time. I hope this clears up a little bit when it comes to how to approach any of this stuff. Yeah, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.